someone wrote in a cold open where Libby asking me, can you name one WR? What is WR? I don't know what WR is. For the Seahawks?
Wide receiver. Is that right?
Oh,
can
that's
you
a
name
little bit harder.
one wide receiver for the Seahawks?
Okay.
Scott.
Originally the thing was, can you name one player? And I was like, of course, I can name two. Sam Darnold and Jackson Smith.
Njigba.
Yeah.
Njigba.
So
you named one. There you go. That's a wide receiver. You did it. Yay. This is auspicious. The wonderful start for our podcast.
I'm hearing all these names for the first time.
Okay, go Seahawks, and let's start the podcast. Let's put ourselves out of our sports talk misery. It's time for Sound Politics.
This is Sound Politics. I'm Scott Greenstone.
I'm Cat Smith, KUOW's politics editor.
And I'm Libby Denkmann. So it's just the three of us here on Sound Politics today because even though it's only February, it's tax season in Washington state. The income tax, it's here.
That's right.
The long-awaited, much-discussed proposal for an income tax on high earners arrived this week in Olympia. But it seems like the bill does not quite have Governor Bob Ferguson's support yet as we tape here on Thursday morning. So let's get into what we are calling Washington Democrats' plan to tax our jocks and our nerds.
At least the millionaire ones.
Yeah, the successful ones.
Perfect with the Super Bowl coming up.
Yeah. So this proposal has a tax for out-of-state athletes playing here that's gotten some people up in arms leading up to the Super Bowl. That's the jocks part. And also, business groups say this tax would fall especially hard on tech workers at startups who are paid in stock that it is about to vest. Those would be the nerds. So jocks and nerds.
Perfect. Drama kids, currently unaffected. Who knows? Proposal is fluid.
Well, we can always dream. Scott, you've spent all week reporting on the so-called millionaire's tax. You have been in Olympia talking with Republicans and Democrats, getting reaction as they try to hash this one out. So run us through, what do we know now about how this income tax proposal is taking shape now that it's out?
Yeah. The first draft is out. It dropped Monday night / Tuesday morning. It is kind of what we expected for the most part. Households making up to $1 million don't pay a dime, but starting at $1.1 million, every dollar you make, a little less than a dime goes to the tax, 9.9%. And there are credits you can get if you pay other states' income taxes, or if you business and occupancy taxes, capital gains taxes, etc.
And we're just talking about 20 to 30,000 people here. That's out of 8 million people in the whole state. So the vast majority of people in Washington are not going to be on the hook for this. So I think Democrats calling this a millionaire's tax instead of calling it an income tax is a bit of clever branding, right? The state doesn't currently have an income tax. The idea of one makes people, little touchy, makes them a little twitchy. But the idea of taxing the rich, that's gotten more popular over the years.
Yeah, we're one of the very few states that does not have an income tax.
Right.
So how much is this supposed to raise, this millionaire's tax, and where would it go?
Yeah. So the estimate is about $3.7 billion. And where it goes is what we were really interested to see this week in this proposal. There are not a ton of firm details on that yet. 5% of it would go to counties to help them pay for public defenders. We have not talked about this on the show much, but many counties are struggling to provide people who can't pay for lawyers legal representation, required by the Miranda rights, the right to remain silent if you do not have a lawyer. One will be provided to you. The rest, that's only 5% of the money. The rest is pretty loose. Like 95% of this money would go into the general fund. And there are commitments or sort of, written sort of promises that in exchange, Democrats would cut sales taxes on shampoo and sunscreen, toothpaste, grooming products.
So specific. I was really confused why these grooming products specifically were the ones they chose to cut the taxes on.
I mean, again, I think that they're probably going to add other stuff in there and expand on that. And they were just like, let's start with
deodorant,
suntan lotion.
Yeah.
See, in a very short list of products.
That's a small part of it, but most critically, this proposal would give tax relief to small businesses and families that earn $50,000 to roughly $68,000 a year, depending on the number of kids they have and if they're married filing jointly. that takes the form of the working families tax credit. That's what that is. If people call, when people say working families tax credit, that's what they're referring to. But that 95%, that all comes out of that 95%, and that being in the general fund means that the Democrats can kind of do a lot of stuff with it. It gives them lots of flexibility, so they could move it around and fill lots of holes in the budget.
And the state budget has a lot of holes in it, and lawmakers are doing this perpetual tug of war every year, it seems. They have to, like you said, move money around to balance the budget or raise taxes, and this state has one of the most lopsided tax structures in the country. Democrats like to point this out, which means basically the tax burden falls heavier on people who make less money. More of their income goes to sales taxes, property taxes, gas taxes, and so the idea here is to put a tax explicitly on people with the deepest pockets and slash some of those taxes that everyone pays.
Yeah.
Maybe to bring some relief to people with less disposable income. But I think where we're probably going to see one of the biggest fights over this in Olympia, as the bill gets debated, is just how much of the existing taxes get cut. Because right now, the bill as it stands doesn't actually slash existing taxes that much, like we mentioned.
Right.
And that's something the governor came out swinging about this week, and we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah. And for those who want to read the actual text of the bill, we're going to leave a link in our show notes to find that. So this has been expected for a long time. Democrats are lining up behind it, but not the Democratic governor of Washington State, at least not yet. I mean, I thought he said he did support the millionaire's tax.
What a twist.
Like, what is going on, Scott? What's going on with Bob Ferguson here? Why the sudden demureness about the millionaire's tax? What do you think?
He's trying to keep it interesting, He's just trying to demure. I love the word demure for that. Yeah, right. It was a big, for a quick review, it was a big deal when Ferguson threw his support behind a millionaire's tax at the end of last year for all the reasons we've talked about again and again on this show. He's been a tax shy guy. He's been a tax demure governor, shall we say. But yeah, he said earlier this week on Tuesday when this proposal came out, he said in this form, like, he wouldn't sign it, even though it is a good start. It doesn't do enough, he said, to put money back in the pockets of Washingtonians who need it. And he wanted more tax relief for small businesses and those mid 5-figure families I'm talking about. He was basically like, good start, not far enough. He said,
I will say that Steve Gordon, a big Republican donor in the state that we've had on the show before, called this basically kabuki theater, that Ferguson was just fainting at disapproval and that this was all a show to pretend to still be a fiscally moderate governor.
Conspiratorial.
It's interesting because this is weird, and we'll get into how weird it was in a minute here, but I think it's also possibly that this is all a little bit of theater, not so much for voters, but for like big business, Microsoft, Amazon, some of those big execs who haven't decided how hard they're going to come out against this bill or if they will come out against this bill. It could be theater. I don't think it's coordinated between the governor and the Democrats who support the bill because the Democrats
seemed surprised.
They said they were surprised, and I believe them. Here is a clip of Joe Fitzgibbon. He's the House Majority Leader. He's also sponsor of the House version of the tax bill.
We were a little surprised by the governor's statement, given the fact that less than 24 hours ago we had a very positive conversation with him about our progress and our work together on this. We knew then that none of us, including him, thought that the bill was in its final form and that there were going to be many opportunities in the weeks to come to move it to a place where it could get support in the Senate and in the House and from him.
So that was on Tuesday, right after the bill proposal we've been talking about came out. And Ferguson was asked a couple hours later at another press conference I was at, what's your reaction to that? And here's what he said.
I've been a little surprised by some of the stuff they have in there as well. So that works both ways. I don't think there's any hard feelings about that. That's the way these things go. This is a big, complex proposal, right? There's lots of details in there. So I understand that, hey, as we get information, sometimes not every detail is there. I understand that. But the main thing is we're talking directly. Our teams are talking directly. So I recognize that sometimes it's a story. They're not quite on the same page. I get that, but what I would really emphasize is I think our conversations are very productive. And are there some surprises for me in this? Of course, it's not a big deal. That's just the way these things work, right? And so I'm not surprised Joe said that.
I'm not surprised Joe said he was surprised.
I'm surprised that Joe was not surprised and that I was surprised about my surprise. So we are, though, I will say, seeing that Ferguson's hesitation, demureness about this tax proposal, it does seem like Ferguson is clearly trying to tie this to the Democratic message of the moment, affordability, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I do think that he's not talking about some of the other things that big business wants to see, which is potentially things like, repealing a surcharge on high profits for high businesses or, or big business and things like that. He's obviously not bringing that stuff up. I think that will be in the conversation when they try to figure out are the big corporate execs, are the corporate bigwigs going to come out against this proposal at the ballot? Are they going to spend money to try and kill it?
What's interesting to me is to watch this negotiation unfolding in the press like this. Dems release their bill. They lowball on tax cuts. Ferguson chides them publicly. Eventually, they'll probably meet somewhere in the middle. It's normal for bills to change as they're debated in the legislature.
Totally, yeah.
This one will probably change over the next few weeks. But to me, it looks like some of those changes are already starting to kind of take shape in real time from the moment this thing got introduced. Like, it hasn't even had a hearing yet. The first hearings are on Friday. Tomorrow, we're taping on Thursday. So the official debate hasn't even started, and yet it feels like the negotiations have begun. And it feels to me like there's this real sense of urgency here, that this thing is moving fast. And maybe in part that's because this is a short legislative session this year, so things kind of have to move fast.
Yeah.
But I also think there's a strike while the iron is hot vibe.
Yeah.
Like there might be this consensus this year around a millionaire's tax, and so Democrats want to move quick.
It is really weird. It would be really weird in normal times for Democrats to drop a giant tax bill right before a big midterm.
Right?
During a short session.
They're trying to basically rejigger the whole tax structure. I mean, if you hear Jamie Peterson, the state Senate majority leader, talk, he's really talking about the regressive nature of Washington's tax code falling more on working class people. I mean, to fix that is a huge shift. It's like a giant undertaking, again, right before a big midterm election, for Democrats. But that's probably, they're feeling that upswing of anger about inequality and affordability. And they think that this is actually a winning message, unusually a winning message.
There's a lot of talk about, the voters want to see us do this. I do think they actually feel some pressure to meet the moment, to kind of be like, we're different than Trump. Trump gave big tax cuts to the wealthy and solidified them last year in what he calls the Big Beautiful Bill. We're different.
Yeah.
But the question is, how much are they actually going to change the tax code for us people who are not paying this tax?
So this has been tried before. I mean, we've talked about it on the show. Yeah. It's been swatted down for, more than 100 years.
10 times, yeah.
Yeah, by the courts or by voters. So, Scott, why would this be the moment an income tax would actually finally pass in Washington state?
Yeah, you said more than 100 years. It's actually almost 100. It's like 94 years. And the reason is because, I got to go to 1932 for this. The year is 1932. Franklin Delano Roosevelt sweeps the nation, flips Washington state blue.
Wow, I feel like a time traveler. You've really taken me there.
But in that same election, 1932, it's really important because Washington voters, again, Republicans mostly, vote for an income tax at 70% say yes to it. So we have said yes to an income tax once before, but that income tax is never realized because the state Supreme Court says it's unconstitutional by the state constitution. Our state constitution has this funky little line in it. It's very special. I don't know if it exists in any other state constitution.
The uniformity clause.
Yeah. All property must be taxed uniformly is the rule. And in 1933, the state Supreme Court said income is property. Also a very weird opinion, according to a number of legal experts I spoke to. So I promise that this is important because what happened then was the state leadership instituted sales and business and occupation taxes to fill that hole caused by no income tax.
And today we have one of the highest sales tax burdens on state and local in the country.
Yeah, those emergency stopgaps are what form the basis of our tax structure today. So voters then, the state leadership was like, okay, wait a second, let's get voters to institute an income tax, change the state constitution in 1934. But suddenly voters are like, wait, I'm paying a lot of sales taxes now. Businesses are paying business. And they say no. And they vote down a constitutional amendment to allow income taxes. And they do that again and again in the 30s, in the 40s. In the 70s, Republican Governor Dan Evans, who we've talked about a lot, he tried to get them to change this, and he even failed despite being a very popular politician. I dove deep into the archives for this and found a little bit of tape of him talking about taxes after a tax tour of the state in 1973.
Is the tax system fair? Is the price we pay, each of us, for the civilization we enjoy, equitable? I think the answer quite clearly is that it is not.
And just so I guess I say all that to say, even Republicans tried to get a constitutional amendment and it didn't work. And here's the key difference now. If the state Supreme Court won't rule it unconstitutional, we don't need a constitutional amendment. Democrats don't need a constitutional amendment. They can just pass it, wait for Republicans to challenge it, and then do what they did with the capital gains tax in 2024. Say, don't repeal this. It funds a lot of great stuff. And voters will be like, you know what? Yeah. So instead of, yes, I want a tax, it's no, don't repeal the tax. That's a lot easier of a question.
And frankly, that's what we've heard from Senator Peterson and others, that this capital gains tax vote by folks across Washington state.
It set a precedent.
It set a precedent. It gave them this idea that voters are ready for taxing the rich. And so this is kind of the strike while the iron is hot message here. So Scott, if this tax does pass in the legislature, when does it go into effect?
The current proposal says January 1st, 2028, but Ferguson and others have said that they expect court challenges, ballot challenges, so they may not start collecting money until potentially 2029.
Wow. So I want to talk more about the opposition to this proposed millionaires tax. Republicans are not going down without a fight on this one.
Totally. Yeah.
What are you seeing, Kat and Scott, in terms of how they are messaging this battle over an income tax?
Right, because Governor Ferguson's not the only person who is not sold on this tax yet.
Yeah, and the opposition to this also comes from history. Republicans say the state Supreme Court said it was illegal. Do we really need to overturn precedent? Democrats hate overturning precedent when it comes to Dobbs, when it comes to abortion rights. Now they love overturning precedent. There's that question. Voters have rejected it. There's that argument. For all the reasons we've talked about, those might not be relevant anymore. And the one strong argument that I've heard from history is from the Tax Foundation, which is a business-friendly think tank. They say essentially every time an income tax like this started up high, it's always come down. Even the federal income tax for a moment there was just on high earners. Here's Jared Walzak, a senior fellow at the Tax Foundation.
When states first started adopting income taxes, many of them only applied to high earners. But if you look at the development of them, they went from something that targeted a small portion of the population to something that brought in just about everyone. It would be strange if Washington was the only state in the nation to have just a high earner income tax for any long period of time.
And I brought this argument, up to the governor, and he said, no way, I'm not signing that. He was very emphatic. Democrats were far less committal on Tuesday, the state and House, state Senate and House Democrats. They said they weren't going to bind future legislatures or make promises future legislatures in different budget situations might not be able to keep. And so the subtext from that is like, yeah, we might bring it down.
Bring it down, meaning expanding it to people who make less than $1 million a year.
700,000, who knows? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was certainly the argument from Jeremy Dufault, who's a Republican member of the House. He's in eastern Yakima County. He wrote the op-ed in the Times this week that is really making that case that this is just the crack in the door that is going to let in the idea of an income tax for everybody. It's not going to stay with high earners. The other thing he's talking about is if we were serious about tax relief for working people, you would see a lot more tax cuts in this legislation instead of this money going to the general fund or whatever, question mark the Democrats want to use for this. So I do want to address the elephant in the room, Scott. That is that Democrats, as they are lining up behind this idea for a millionaire's tax, very shortly ago, I mean, it feels like an eye blink ago, they outlawed the idea of an income tax. They passed legislation saying there can be no income tax in Washington state. So what's going on here?
Yeah, in fact, there was a question about that. Some of the Democrats sitting in the Senate Rules Room, announcing the legislation, simply 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago, voted to ban income taxes. And that's that whole thing about the pie crust promises that that Senator Jamie Peterson said on this podcast.
The pie crust heard round the world.
Exactly. Since the Republicans make a big deal about it, he said, we call those pie crust promises easily made, easily broken.
Sitting right here in this studio.
That's right.
In this very studio.
Yeah. Where you're sitting right now, Kat.
Okay, so we are talking about the very first income tax in Washington state. If it passes the legislature, if the governor can get on board with the amount of tax relief for working people that he sees in this legislation, if it passes muster with the state Supreme Court, and then, of course, if it survives a challenge, a likely initiative challenge from Republicans at the ballot.
There's a lot of ifs.
There's a lot of ifs.
We're early in this process.
But for all of the times throughout history that this has failed, it does seem like the stars have aligned in a new and unique way for Democrats. But we mentioned at the top of the show that this is not just for the high earners that you might expect in Washington state. The Microsoft, folks whose stock is vesting, the nerds. We are also looking at a jock tax here. Yeah. And I'm fascinated by that. Kat, what's going on here? What's the deal with the jock tax?
Yeah. Well, so our resident pro athletes who make over $1 million a year, they're going to be subject to this tax. But there are a couple sections in the bill that include student athletes who get paid to play and do endorsements, who do endorsement work in the state.
Name, image, and likeness, folks.
Exactly. And it also includes visiting athletes who don't live in Washington but come here to play. So think like a couple weeks ago, the LA Rams were in town. They lost to the Seahawks in that NFC Championship game in Seattle. If this bill were in effect at that time, the Rams players would have been subject to the state income tax.
I cannot believe. I'm really shook by this. I had no idea about this. So how do you tax somebody who's just here for a few days?
Even if they're just here for a few days, it's like it's called a duty day formula. So it's like whatever duties that you're doing that you're paid for your team, meetings, practices, games, they're going to tax you on that.
So, like, Shohei Ohtani shows up for a couple days to play at T-Mobile, or Patrick Mahomes is at Lumen Field. Like, boom, they're taxed. Wow.
And so this is called a jock tax, and it's a first for Washington state, but it's pretty common around the rest of the U.S. Most states, I've never heard of this, but now I know most states in the country, have an income tax, and visiting athletes usually have to pay some form of that. And some cities even have their own jock tax too. Do you guys want to hear something amazing about how jock taxes, as we know them, came to be?
I absolutely do.
God, this is so wild. Okay, so let me set the scene. We're going to do some more history. Recent history. So, okay, it's 1991. The NBA playoffs are happening. We're in California for the finals. LA Lakers versus Chicago Bulls. Michael Jordan, most famous athlete in the world. He's delivering nail-biting wins, and the Bulls beat the Lakers at home. It's wild. After the finals, California decides to aggressively enforce its income tax on visiting athletes. Michael Jordan owes something like, it's not even that much. It's like $1,500 for the days that he played in California in the playoffs. They want Jordan and his teammates to pay what they owe in the income taxes. So the same year, the state of Illinois introduces its own jock tax, which becomes known as Michael Jordan's revenge.
Wow. This is messy, and I'm loving it. Yeah.
And this petty taxation drama seems to inspire other states because the idea catches fire across the country. Jock taxes have been around for decades before this, but they really have a moment in the 90s, and now they're normal.
I love this. I love that us drama kids can actually be getting into some part of this this whole
I have
tax
never
thing.
been more excited about sports in my life.
I was going to say, you're taking on some really, you're spitting sports history fire here.
I loved this.
If we lose the Super Bowl, I'm not manifesting this,
Yeah.
but if we lose the Super Bowl, this could be like Sam Darnold's revenge tax or something like that.
Oh, you know what else?
You heard it here first.
The Super Bowl is going to be played in California, right?
Yeah.
So both the Patriots and the Seahawks are going to have to pay California's
The
jock
California
tax.
jock tax.
That's a great thing
And
to remember.
This can get actually really complicated. Like I saw a crazy stat that depending on travel schedules, some pro athletes have to file upwards of like 20 tax returns. It's not exactly a popular idea among athletes. And there are even lawyers who specialize in this kind of thing because it's so messy.
I was going to say it sounds like a great lawyer employment act as well. Okay, so really quickly here, I want to just get a moment before we go to talk about the stakes and our predictions for what could go down. How is this going to shake out? What does it mean for the state? Scott, you first.
Yeah, well, I just want to say stakes. There's not, we talk about this giant budget hole that they're in right now. I just wanted to drive home to everybody that this is not going to help with that. It's not going to help with next year's budget hole if it exists. It's not even maybe going to help with 2028's budget hole if it exists. So the stakes here are more about the long-term trajectory of. We're certainly probably still going to be in a budget hole in 2028. That's what the projections say. But I just want to level the stakes that I think Democrats are still going to have to do a lot of cuts this year, regardless of whether or not this passes.
Yeah. I mean, it's Democrats saying we need to level the playing field or at least tilt this incredibly regressive tax code back towards working people. Republicans saying, no, you are greedy, you're trying to get more money to spend, and that this is going to hurt working people. Eventually, it's not just going to stay with the wealthy. Of course, the other issue is, do we push the next Jeff Bezos away, the next, rich person who's going to, start a company that makes a lot of jobs, et cetera. There's that consideration.
We could probably do a whole episode.
I think we should probably do a whole episode about do rich people leave in situations like this. Kat, what's your take on the stakes and what's next?
I want to see if Ferguson can get Democrats to add in more tax breaks. Like, I would be curious. I don't know. This is probably a pipe dream. Like, I want to know if they would consider chipping away at the gas tax or like alcohol taxes. A girl can dream. Okay. To me, it just seems like the retail sales tax on personal hygiene problems, that rollback, it just felt like an afterthought. Like, Scott, you might remember the first time we read through this bill on Monday, and I couldn't find the section where they were detailing what products that were going to get cut. I looked, and it took me like an hour. It's buried all the way at the end of the bill, almost on the last page, 58 out of 62.
Yeah. Mouthwash, things like that.
And it felt like an afterthought. It's a really short list. It's like 5 items.
How often do people buy deodorant?
Right?
I mean, I use it every day. I don't buy it that often.
I feel like I'm going to be watching to see if that list gets expanded. Like more tax breaks that the average person might actually notice. They might make a difference for people who feel like the cost of living is spiraling out of control for them.
Okay, now that I've bragged about using deodorant every day and we've gotten to some of the big considerations, we're going to be talking about more about this millionaire's tax that Democrats have introduced this week in the state legislature. Will Governor Ferguson get on board? Will the arguments from Republicans land with voters in particular in the future? All of this is for a future episode, but thank you so much, Cat Smith and Scott Greenstone, for being here for Sound Politics.
Thanks, Libby.
Thanks for having me. That's it for Sound Politics today. Our show is produced by Gabrielle Healy. Our editor and co-host today is Cat Smith. I'm Scott Greenstone.
And I'm Libby Denkmann. And just a reminder, this show is only possible because of folks like you who give a little bit to KUOW to help us continue to do this work.
To buy deodorant.
All of those big costs of making a podcast. Thank you so much to everybody who gives. And you can find a link in our show notes, KUOW.org/politics, to chip in a little bit. Thank you so much.
See you next week.